Welcome to the Career Creator Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel. Today we have a new guest joining us, Tonia Branche. She is a friend of mine, and we were joking while we were prepping for this podcast because I really struggle to understand all her job titles. She has a lot of titles and letters behind her name, a very accomplished woman in the medical field. She is a neonatology fellow, and I don't know exactly what that means. So I will let her explain. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Tonia. And sorry if I did not say that correctly.
No, thank you for having me. And it's okay. I still have to explain to my family and a lot of friends exactly what I do. I am a neonatology fellow, so I have completed medical school and residency and am now finishing up my fellowship, which is the subspecialty training that you do after your residency. So I did pediatrics residency, and now my field is specializing in the intensive care of newborn babies. So I take care of premature babies and any babies who are born that are sick or have like congenital differences that need special care.
Okay, thank you. You can
Yeah.
describe that in such a clear and easy to understand way. So thank you for doing that because I would not have been able to describe it that way. And I also want to add, which I didn't know this until we were prepping for this, that you have MD and an MPH. I did not know you also got your master's in public health.
I did. I got my master's in public health during medical school at the University of Miami. That actually has helped me sort of create the niche that I'm working on building for my career in health equity and advocacy.
And that's really the topic of this conversation today because I feel like Tonia has done a really great job of building out a niche in her field and finding her way. I think a lot of us really, struggle. I know I did to find what's my place in my field. Maybe I know I'm in the right field, but I don't know exactly where I belong or how to figure out how to do the things I want to do. And so, Tonia, you have experience in a hospital and then you've done research. So I'm excited to hear more about your journey and how you've meshed together all of your interests to create this space that really matters to you and that you bring a lot of value to. So thanks for coming here. Usually I ask people, what did you want to be when you grew up? Which I love that question. But I think a question that people didn't ask us as kids that I really wish they did is, who do you want to be? Like, who's the kind of person you want to be? How do you want to show up in the world? Did you have any idea of that when you were younger?
That is a really great question. If you had asked me what I wanted to be, I think that question has been pretty consistent since I was a really young child, that I wanted to be a pediatrician and I wanted to work with kids. I think that as I thought about who I wanted to be as I got older and sort of figured out like what different careers offered, I really wanted to be someone who took care of people. I've always loved taking care of other children. I've always loved taking care of the people around me, my friends, my family. I wanted to do something that was meaningful, that really helps other people be the best that they can be. As I've navigated the different options within medicine and within pediatrics and um, in general within this field, I fell upon neonatology. And I felt that there's this amazing section of pediatrics where you can really affect the trajectory of each of these babies' lives by the work that you do to help their health and to help set them up, for the rest of their lives. So that's kind of how I decided upon neonatology. And it really dovetails with my own personal desires to really leave a positive impact in the world and really help to improve everyone's equity.
Yeah, and that's really special because you are, working with families at a very critical time in their child's life. And you said you've always wanted to serve. That's really the foundation for not just who you are, but the work you do. And I can say, as Tonia's friend, she's the friend who, when we check in, I say, Tonia, are you taking care of yourself? She serves so much. You see it in her life. She's always helping everyone around her. So I'm always like, make sure you take care of yourself too. Pour into your cup because that is just how she's wired. Do you know why you're wired like that? Did you see that around you? Is it just who you were? Do you have any insights into that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, actually. My mom is very similar. She is a person who is always willing to give and always willing to help when as she's able. I think that, I was able to see that modeled by someone who is very important to me and close to me, but also growing up in the church and just really building my own personal faith with God. I think that I really identified with this concept of, serving those around you, loving those around you selflessly, and not to get gain for you, but to really, give to that other person, and that God gives that like benefit, and that, like reaping that harvest back to you in some way, and brings the blessings back. And so yeah, I think that it's a mix of both of those things, and I've always just felt like, I think, personality wise and intuition wise, I've always been a person who's been led to help other people, especially if I'm in a position to do so.
Yeah, that's great. And it really shows up, I think, when you're doing the work that's aligned with who you are naturally, but it sounds like also your faith and your family have influenced that. And so this is a rare thing where usually people have something they want to do when they're a child and we grow up and we don't do that, but you did the thing. And not only that, but becoming a doctor is a very long, long, expensive journey. So
Yes, very
I
much
want
so.
to hear, how have you kept up the stamina? How have you kept going throughout this process? Because you are in your fellowship right now,
Mhm.
and this has been such a long journey. Basically, your entire life you've been working towards this. How do you keep it going when it's such a long path?
Yes, this journey is one of the longest, if not the longest, professional journeys that are out there. Um, but I think that, what has really helped me get through, outside of just the actual support from my family and my friends and mentors, is really making sure that as I make decisions about the next step, that I'm staying true to who I am and what I want. When you work, crazy hours and you're at the hospital, really late for many, many hours, in really intense situations, those are the moments when I stop and think, am I really doing what I love? Am I fulfilled by this? Even though I'm exhausted, am I happy? Do I feel good? And I've had to ask myself that many, many times along the way. And if I ever get to a point where I'm not happy or I feel unfulfilled, I ask myself why. And I have to reset and think about how I can adjust what I'm doing to fit that. It's a little difficult to do when you're in a field that has a very regimented and stepwise way for getting to the next place, in
Mhm.
terms of, you have to go to medical school, you have to go to residency, you don't have to do a fellowship, but you need to, complete these training pit stops along the way. And you don't really get a choice as much as to if you can do that or not, but you do get a choice as to which specialty you pick, what projects you work on, what you want to be your like niche within the space and the timeline.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I took time off along the way to, regain my endurance and to reset my mental health. And I think that was crucial to me being able to successfully get to this point.
That's a really good point, the taking the breaks, because don't I haven't heard that in a lot of stories, but I think it's so key because most people I talk to who have taken breaks don't regret it.
Mhm.
And it really paid off. So you talked about finding your space, finding the projects you want to work on, finding your specialty. How did you find your specialty?
Yeah, in college was my first introduction to the concept of public health. And I took a class within my major, which was African and African American Studies, called Race, Poverty, and Health, that Dr. David Williams taught. And it was the first time that I saw, in an academic way, a discussion about concepts that I already had been exposed to before, that there are differences in people's health and differences in their health trajectory based on their race, based on their socioeconomic status, based on their living environment, all these different social determinants. From there, I realized that that piqued my interest. That really, got me excited about, well, what can we do about it? So as I continued on my journey, I made the decision to get a master's in public health during med school. And I knew that I wanted to be in the hospital. I actually knew that I wanted to specialize in something. And it didn't seem at first that I could mix a subspecialty and a public health, passion and working on health equity. And so I started to talk to people around me and to do some research and to also just think about the people that I'd seen in different specialties within medicine who had been able to create some really cool combinations of their different passions. You know, they wanted to see patients and treat patients, but also wanted to work on things in like the legal space or
Yeah.
in the political space or business wise. And I thought, wow, if these people, could do it and say that they were able to bring their passions together into one career, there's got to be a way for me to do that also. And so I've been like really blessed over time to get to meet more and more people who have a like-minded interest with me and see the way that they've carved out spaces in their career to bridge those gaps. And now I'm able to do the same in my own way. And I'm just getting really, really started on the bulk of it, but I'm super excited for the next steps and the future potential.
And I heard you say you saw people who were building their own path, so that representation. But then you started to find people who are interested in the same topics as you. And I'm curious because we know, I'm sure you are aware of this. You've been doing this work and you know the issues that exist, but then it's trying to get others to see that the issues exist, trying to get support and resources to pursue those things. How have you been able to hate for this space and let people know how important it is and to get the resources and support that you need to work in this space?
That is a great question and very, very poignant for me over the past few years. I knew that I was interested in this going into residency, and it was hard to find mentorship where I was. People were interested in other things. And I had a come to Jesus moment of having to accept the fact that maybe I wasn't getting the mentorship and support in the space that I was in, and I had to leave that space in order to find it, which was
Mm,
very difficult for me because I was already home in Dallas and I was in a space that I was comfortable in outside of my career and life things. And, we talk about work life balance, and I felt like I had the life balance, but the work balance wasn't there in terms of me feeling fulfilled and really being able to work on what I wanted to. So that was one aspect of me finding that was actually having to leave and seek out the mentorship elsewhere. And that's how I've landed here in Chicago and have been really, really grateful for all the mentorship and exposure that I've gotten here to this side of the field. I would say that it's also something that, in terms of health equity and advocacy, that is newer to the medical field overall.
mm,
And
mhm,
there traditionally have not been a lot of resources for that, or it hasn't necessarily been regarded as something that, is like more of a formal discipline within medicine or that deserves funding for research. And it's kind of been more shifted to like the public health and community foundation space
mhm,
over the last, few years in particular, as concepts of structural racism and systemic racism and inequity have come to the forefront of discussion nationally and internationally. I think that the academic space is starting to pay more attention to that. And so part of us supporting and really showing others that this is meaningful, not only is it you standing your ground for what you believe in and what you want to work on, and maybe that means moving yourself to different places and showing people that it matters to you. In addition, it is also being productive in this space and taking advantage of the resources that are there and showing people that this work matters. And now we're getting more and more attention into the equity and advocacy space. And there's more and more funding that is coming available as people are seeing there's real, issues that need to be addressed. And it does actually impact our patients and the community.
yeah, I love what you said about like using what you have in front of you if you don't have the support, but also knowing when to move and when to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah,
hard. That is
very hard.
very hard to do, which I know you know because you've done it. I've done it. It is not easy when you're like, not this, this isn't working. I'm going to go try somewhere else, not knowing for sure if it's going to be what I thought it was. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious for you, now that you're in a place where you do have more of those support and resources, what has your research looked like? Yeah. What have you learned in the last few years?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed my fellowship time, and this training experience, for those who are less familiar, is, both clinical and academic and research wise. And so it's been a really great opportunity for me to explore a number of different projects within the health equity space. So I've been able to work on epidemiology projects that look at like trends in the population and outcomes for different things based on certain situations that influence that. So like how do we look at the trends of babies and their outcomes that when they're born prematurely based on their race, based on their parents' education level, their parents' nativity. But at the same time, I've been able to expand more into the advocacy space and learn from others across the country. So I've worked on a mental health campaign for families in the NICU, looking at how we can improve the way we support our families in the NICU and the parents, the family members, the siblings. And, mental health is something that we've seen on the forefront a lot more in discussion, but has always been something that's super important. And so it's been cool to be a part of making statements and educating others about that importance. I've been able to work on also just clinical projects and that, are more traditionally seen in the medical space, but bring that lens of health equity and, speaking about and talking with others in the field about how we can improve the safety of babies born out of the hospital electively.
Mm.
It's been just a really cool time to see how many different ways that I can impact the field and impact the people around me and my patients, and makes me excited for all the potential to come.
Yeah, I love this holistic perspective because you're not just focused on the patients you're treating directly in front of you, but you're also looking at the families and you're looking at practices for home birth. Like, I love how you're taking this bigger picture view of everything in this space and having an impact. So, if there's any way that the listeners can support this work, support this advocacy, what can we all do?
That is a great question. I say first and foremost, the doctors, we are trained and we do the medical side of things, but there's a lot more that people and the community can do to support public health and healthcare and the lives of those people around you. And one of the most important things is to vote and to know who your representatives are, not just on a national level, but probably more importantly on a local and a state level. So just making sure that you're a part of that conversation, that you support different pieces of legislation that relate to family health and the healthcare of our kids, whether that's parental leave or advocating for home health, because you just never know how this will impact your family and those around you and impact your community. The other part of it is to really be an advocate for yourself. And I always am encouraging my patient families to really speak up about the things that they experience, whether it's personally or those around you, and really take charge of understanding your health and educating yourself, because I know that there are different communities that are disadvantaged in different ways. We as people in the medical community need to learn and understand about those experiences and do what we can to help. Those are two of the easiest and biggest ways that will help improve things in the community. If you're blessed enough to have the financial ability, any
Yes.
support that you give to advocacy projects and community foundations who are working to improve equitable care, for their community are super important and near and dear to my heart.
Are there any foundations you recommend?
There's a whole host of them, but I really love some of the perinatal networks, like the National Perinatal Association and even CASA, which is a child advocacy group that I know there's one in Dallas, and there are like a few that are similar within different communities. I think I could probably list a million of them, but I think there are a bunch that, as you look around in your community, I think ones that actually are doing the work of supporting families as a whole and supporting the mental health in particular of NICU families is something that I am really passionate about. So
Okay, so everyone vote, look in your community, donate, volunteer, spread the word. If you're a healthcare professional, see how you can be involved with these things. Are there any required classes in medical school about health equity, access, advocacy?
It really depends on the program and the institution. I think more and more over the years, there's been some advocacy component of medical education, and that is starting to become more of a commonplace finding in a lot of the curricula. But there's always room for more. And I love what I'm seeing about more and more programs offering masters in public health to medical students and within fellowships and offering to support people who are interested in getting that education, or at the very least, just integrating it in commonplace into the curricula. I think that is something that is extremely important and really should be part of our education all the way through.
Yeah.
As we're looking at education reform across the country in many ways, I think that about equity, teaching about how you can be an advocate even from a younger age is something that is really important.
Yeah, I agree. If we all grew up kind of learning that, using our voice and how powerful it is to speak up for what's right and to be a part of making things better, I think, we'd all benefit from that. Curious if someone came to you today, a high school student, and said, Tonia, I'm thinking about going to medical school. Do you have any advice? Like what would you tell them about your career path, or how would you kind of sum up that experience, or what advice would you give them?
I do get that
I
question
love the
often.
laugh.
I do get that question quite often. I really talk to people about why they wanted to go into medicine and what their passion really is. And I ask something similar to what you asked me at the very beginning of this conversation about who you want to be, what's
Mm,
the kind of legacy that you want to leave, to help, guide and direct them to think about the different options within medicine, and really make sure that they keep that at the forefront of their mind in terms of who they want to be and why. I remind them that this journey is very long, but it's doable, and it's doable with the support of people around them, and that they're going to need that motivation, that endurance to be able to get through. But they can do it. They just have to surround themselves with the right foundation. And so, yeah, I give a lot of advice to pre-med students and medical students and residents, and how to navigate this space. Sponsorship is key. We can't do it by ourselves by any means, and
yeah.
not just having a mentor and someone to tell you what to do or where to go, but you really need sponsors who are able to help you get your foot in the door, to really understand the space, particularly for our underrepresented students and trainees. You need people to help guide you and lead the path for you. So that's a couple of the biggest pieces of advice that I give them.
Ooh, I love what you said about the mentor sponsor, because mentors are more in the like action, like down in the trenches with you, like going through the things. But the sponsor oftentimes is the one who can actually open the door. So, how
Yes.
have you seen the differences between a mentor and a sponsor in your career?
Yeah, I would say that I really didn't even understand the concept of sponsorship until recently, until the last few years. And I would have mentors along the way who I would come to with questions about which program to apply to, or I'm thinking about this field. What's your experience in this field? And can you tell me more about what you've done? And maybe you read over my like personal statement or things like that. So mentors are definitely important people, but the sponsors, it's like another level. I've had people who have given me opportunities to speak at events, who have suggested that I work with someone and connect me with someone on research or publications. They've set up meetings for me to be able to talk to people who are advanced in the field that I'm in. And that has had a totally different impact on me being able to really not only see others do what I would like to do, but really get a chance to start actually doing it. And that's what's really, I felt like, propelled my career in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I feel like sponsors that I've had, we don't necessarily talk all the time or that often. It's a
Yeah.
different level of relationship. We may not meet as regularly, but they are aware of what I'm working on, who I am. We know each other, and it's just a different type of relationship. Have you had that same experience?
Yeah, I would say the same. And even with some mentors too, I tell people that, just similar to like your friendships and connections with others, there are people who are meant to be there for like a season, and some who are meant to be there for a lifetime. So you may meet somebody on the way to a conference or something, like I did one time. And, that's a person that I've kept in touch with over the years, and we don't talk regularly, but every once in a while I'll reach out to him and connect him with other mentees of mine or ask for advice or a connection. There are others that I've had over, years and or through certain transitions. I needed mentorship getting into medical school or getting into residency or fellowship, and now looking for a job. And so some of the relationships that you have with a mentor or sponsor may not be meant to be for like your whole career. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just for that purpose, and that's okay. And then, you both move on. And as you shift and transition, you rebuild your mentorship and sponsorship team as you go. But I think that that's something on the flip side, as people who are starting to move forward in our careers, I feel like it's important for people to also step into those roles for other people, and you may not be able to mentor someone over years and years, but just connecting them with one important person might change the whole trajectory of their career and give them the support that they needed or that foot in the door that they needed to get to the next place.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a full circle thing. You receive the mentorship, but you also are giving it back. And I love that we're ending here because our next topic, Tanya is going to be back for the next episode, and we're going to talk about friendships. And I feel like this applies to friendships too. The
Yes, it
idea that they
does.
change throughout your life.
Yeah.
So before we close out, I just want to hear, where can people connect with you?
Yes. So you can connect with me on Instagram or Twitter. So I just launched my more like professional page for my advocacy niche. It's Dr. Equity, TEE, on Twitter, and Dr. Equity on Instagram. And you can also, we'll put my email and things on the site, and I'm happy to connect more with people.
Okay, thanks. I will add that info to the website and also to the show notes so you can find out how to connect with Tanya. Thank you so much, Tanya, for being here today. This has been wonderful.